welcome to the Real Estate Heavyweights podcast. I am Ashton Hines, one half of the Real Estate Heavyweights. I'm here with my good friend, fellow real estate professional, my mentor, Tavis Westbrook. What's up, Tavis?
What up? Hello, hello, hello.
You know the latest thing that you've helped me with?
What is that?
Your mentorship, your Obi-Wan Kenobi-ing of my life.
What might that be, Grasshopper?
The last week I have made my bed every day.
Hey, there we go. Look at that.
I'm not a millionaire yet, but I do feel better about things. It actually is really cool. I've been through a streak before where I did it, so this is not,
Yeah.
But we had this conversation, like, this is something I started doing a long time ago. I was like, you know what? I've done that before. I'm going to get back into that.
Yeah.
So, yep, every day.
That's awesome.
You know, what's funny about it is, I don't know if it's for whatever reason, like whenever I started doing that, like I started getting a little bit more particular and OCD-ish about how other things were like clean, and set up, and closets, trying to keep your closet, I've been getting the dishes out of the sink at night, trying to just sort of reset things. And, I don't know. I've felt it's like it's this funny little magic trick that you can do, and then you sort of want your space to be nice and tidy, and so you pick a few other things up, as opposed to just letting it stay there just completely disheveled for like literally 2 weeks at a time.
Yeah.
Or whatever. So yeah, I have
awesome.
taken that back.
Well, we talked about that, right? And it's one of those little things. I mean, it's in a lot of books. It's not the first time anyone's heard this, but it's little things that you can do, just starting your day off right and checking the box and feeling like you accomplished something, right? In a short amount of time, from the time you get up, shower, get ready, within the first hour of your day, you've already accomplished a few things. And now it's something that you look at as completion, and you walk by it and you see it done, right? And so when it's not done, it messes with your head. So little things like that. And then, like you said, you're now triggered to see some other things out of place or something that you're like, hey, let me go ahead and do this. So it's little things you can do that empower your brain and your mind to start the day off right.
Yeah. Is there an earthquake there? Your cameras. We're not that far apart. It looks like the camera's shaking. No, I thought that was great. And so I've got that going, feeling good. So I know you're going to a funeral. You're going out of town this time for a funeral, unfortunately. But still, you've got to kind of tie some things up. And I know you were over at Primrose yesterday. I've got to go. We've got to keep those cabinets from disintegrating before the cabinet maker gets there. I was thinking yesterday from a demo standpoint, do you ever, so just for anyone who didn't know, hadn't heard, Primrose is a Fox and Jacobs flip. I've helped demo it. It's over in Carrollton. One of the things we're trying to save are the cabinets. Well, they're literally made of particle board. I mean, the front faces are real wood, but the bases are particle board, and 1970s particle board. And so any jostling at all really messes with it. They're put together with staples, these longer staples. So it is difficult to kind of just really tender loving care of these cabinets. But so what I was thinking of, do you ever leave the countertops on for a little bit longer just to kind of keep all that in place? Because I was trying to think through how I'd have done it differently. And I guess we could, if your guy can go measure, Angel can go measure countertops correctly, do you ever leave the old countertops on for a while just to kind of protect the cabinets and then demo those last minute?
Not typically, just because it's one of those things you want to check off the box, right, and get it out of the way. It makes it easier for for everything, right? Like once it's out of the way, it's done. Okay, that part's completed. This was a unique situation because it seems like everywhere we turned there was there was some issue. Usually you might have one or two cabinets that have some problems, but This one, even
I
the tile
found
guy
all of
called me
them.
this morning. A tile, the starting tile over there. So
Oh, okay.
master bath tile, and the tile guy called me and he goes, "Hey, are you leaving this cabinet in the master? Because it's kind of like falling apart. And are we leaving it? Are we working around it? Are you gonna replace it? What are you doing?" I'm like, "No, we're leaving it." Just
Don't breathe on it. Yeah. Yeah, I
so
mean, Fox and Jacobs did a really, a lot of their house, a lot of parts of their house have actually held up very well
yeah.
through the years. The cabinets are,
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if we can make it through this and keep the majority of the cabinets as is without Ely convincing me or strong arming me to change them all out. Because at this point, it's too late in the game to make that decision, in my opinion. Like, there's something I was trying to make a decision on early on, and then we decided, okay, he wasn't moving fast enough to get it to that point. So
yeah,
let's keep him. Let's make it work. Let's modify what we can. We are doing a lot of surgery to them because
yeah.
they had the plastic drawer boxes that were falling
Hmm.
apart, and so we're going to rebuild all the boxes, and we're doing several things,
I think
including
you
new
could at least
shelves
keep a lot of
inside.
the faces, even if you had to
Yeah,
replace
the
a few
faces are
sides
the
of like
faces are
the,
good.
yeah. So anyway, but
Anyways,
trying to get that tied up. And then I know Shady Hill is really looking awesome. The pool guys finally came around. They did the decking. They put the salt
new
finish
pool
on
guys.
there.
We'll say
New
new pool
new
guys.
pool guys, yes. And they got to work, man. We went over there and they
I,
had a jackhammer,
I had to
3 or
shift
4 of
gears.
them, and there was, I guess, the concrete around the old pool. I mean, that had to have been 6 inches thick, 8 inches
Oh yeah,
thick, something like
yeah,
that. I mean, it was a lot of concrete. And so they busted all that up one day or one afternoon. They had it loaded out the next day,
yep.
started putting forms together, got the concrete. Man, those guys were legit. But yeah, that house is just really looking great. And the flooring guys are over there now. I don't know if you've been over there in the last day, but
Yeah,
um,
I didn't send you any yesterday. I guess the upstairs is pretty much done. So the
cool.
upstairs floors are done, and
Yeah.
they were prepping downstairs yesterday. And
Uh,
here's the thing: it pays. I think we said this before, but it pays to have the right company do these kind of floors. This is a waterproof laminate, like a high end waterproof laminate, and the benefit of doing this is it's scratch resistant, water resistant, etc. And this being a midterm rental, it's important to have something that's going to be durable.
mhm.
The company that I use has talked me out of doing the LVP. I guess they're not going to warranty them anymore. I guess they're running into problems with
Mm.
them kind of coming apart or separating, and like repairs have been becoming difficult. Knock on wood, I haven't had any issues anytime I've ever used the LVP. Um, but this product, it looks really good. It looks like a real wood floor. Feels good. It has a lot of benefits to it. Um, but it's like a waterproof laminate. So it's just
Mhm.
a different
Yeah.
product. But my point is, spend the money to have the right person install this. I don't know how many investors out there spend $1 or $2 for somebody off the streets, or they're hitting up the DFW investment site and asking
Mhm.
for somebody to install floors for them, and they can buy it cheap because it's less than $3 a foot, or something like that, and they just want somebody to go install it. And if you don't do the prep right, it's gonna be terrible.
Yeah.
And so these guys, even upstairs on the second floor, which is a wood subfloor, they were up there sanding it and grinding it and floating it and
Mm.
prepping it and
Making it work just right.
making it perfect,
Yeah.
and then downstairs, which is a slab, doing the same thing,
Yeah.
of course.
Wow.
So I just sent you some pictures.
Cool. Well, I'll have to check those out.
Yeah.
So today we are going to do a little bit more in-depth flip talk during our house breakdown. We've been breaking down very high-end houses in Dallas, and that's a lot of fun. But I thought we'd do a little change of pace. We're going to break down an actual house that we're considering making an offer on, or we should make an offer on, and uh, and kind of back into the numbers and just talk a little bit more about flipping. So, because those are the types of houses we actually look at every day. We don't normally walk into $17 million houses and critique the level of marble they use. But it's fun to do on pictures, but the real work is we run a lot of numbers and look at a lot of houses that are very similar to the one we're going to check out. So we have a little bit of more flip top to come up, and we can talk about maybe we can talk about the house that we walked in the other day with my clients. Your relatives are looking for a house, a young couple, and they wanted us to check out a house. And so we went and looked at one, and we experienced what would be considered a bad flip. A bad flip over in Richardson. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So why don't we get into a market update? So I can get it to where I can make this a little easier, but I have yet to figure that out. But here we go. Sharing.
There we go.
Looky. I have it on our months of supply. You can tell this is a very sharp decline. We were at 4.8 in August and September, and now we are steady going down. Right now, overall months of supply is 3.9 months.
Nice.
The dip is, it happens every year. So here's November, December, January, and then over here is November, December, January. You can see the dip, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this happens. So supply will go down, and this will go into some of the news we're going to talk about, just what the housing market might be doing now that we have Trump in there making laws and signing things and, sort of pledging for housing. So, but the market itself is, the supply is going down. I mean, we can go ahead and mention it here.
If you look back, and there's been a lot of chatter about like comparison to 2019 going into 20. And if you look back at the chart, you kind of see that we're really similar in that.
Our levels are similar. I mean, so 3.6 months of supply in December, January, 3.8. So we're around those levels now. I mean, we're actually about to touch into those levels. So yeah, very similar to 2019. So we can kind of see where it goes from there. But as far as the market goes right now, we have our average day on market is on an upward trend, 67 days, 59 in Denton, 54 in Dallas, 63 in Collin County. Homes for sale, we are on a downward trend. Again, months of supply are down. So basically what this is looking like is that the supply is going down, but I had an article pulled up and then it went away, but I think it was Realtor.com or Redfin One. They do this study. They kind of keep a tab on consumer demand for houses. And right now, their numbers are showing an increased demand in housing. So demand is going up, supply is going down. So that means pricing will most likely go up. And so this is where we can go ahead and grab one of the news stories we were going to do here. And, I looked up, what does it mean that, what will it mean if Trump is, going to get to do what he wants to do? And he says, I'm going to sign this, sign that. And so this comes from Redfin, kind of looking at some of the policies he's talked about. And they think that mortgage rates are going to stay around 7% with the policies. Part of it is hard to figure out because he talks about, I'm going to reduce inflation, I'm going to reduce the cost of this, but he's also talking about putting tariffs on things, which could, the math of that is things are more expensive, most likely. And so will it actually have an impact on pricing if he does do those tariffs? He's backed off a little bit on the tariff talk, so maybe it'll ride out a little bit. They do anticipate housing prices will go up because a lot of the things we've been talking about, supply is going down, demand is going up. People are becoming more comfortable with the 7% rate environment. It's been going fairly level for a while. And so people are ready to get moving. And so if the demand goes up and pricing goes up, then affordability could become an issue. This part of the thing they say could improve is the housing supply. So really the only true way to address affordability is to have a huge influx of supply. We're about 6 million units behind nationally. That's kind of the number people throw around. So in order to get more units on, they have to, one thing Trump is talking about doing is lowering regulations. The problem with the talk about lowering regulations is a lot of them are local or state. There's not a ton of federal regulations, but I did find this interesting. The National Association of Home Builders estimates the cost of regulations on a new house is $94,000, or
Wow.
roughly 25% of a new house cost they allocate to regulation. And so I actually looked at the study.
And I'm sure that's related to energy efficiency and
yeah, like fees, and then doing things above and beyond kind of like the basic safety things of like, hey,
like
we need you to do
the
this.
new electrical codes and all
Yeah,
this stuff
exactly.
that they've done. Yeah.
So some of them was like, okay, we can't get rid of all of these. There is a baseline of safety, but then there are these higher standards that some cities require. Plus, you just have the cost of the fees themselves and inspections and all that.
Yeah.
Well, that number just seemed insane to me. 94,000, roughly 25%.
I mean, I can see that. I mean, 10 years ago, build a 3,000 square foot house. The average electrical was running about, 18 to 20 grand. And now it's like easily, 35 to 40 grand, for the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, City of Dallas has gotten better about their efficiency, and so some of this was carrying costs. If like I know up in Seattle, these things take months and months and months, and so your carrying costs also go up. And so I'm not sure if that's attributed to that number, but yeah, I definitely see there is room for improvement there. I guess is what I'm saying is they could do this trickle down of like, hey, let's make it easier to do business. And kind of streamline things, and maybe that will help that number come down. Will that actually translate to the buyer? Who knows? Maybe it just creates more margin. While we're here, we'll just go ahead and talk about what a Trump presidency means for renters. They do think that affordability will improve somewhat, but they're also, that is balanced out by, there's talk of reducing some of the government assistance for rentals. So not really sure how that will play out. All right, so that'll do it for the market update. Let's go ahead and talk about a little bit of news here. And one of the things we didn't talk about last week was the Malibu and California fires.
Yeah.
Really sad. For those of you who don't know, I went to school at Pepperdine for undergrad, and that is in Malibu, Southern California. About a month ago, maybe 5 weeks ago, Pepperdine was threatened with another fire. I think that one actually got a little bit closer to the campus. But this one was a Pacific Palisades fire. For those of you who don't know, Malibu actually is 27 miles long and roughly 1 mile wide. And so when they say that some, Malibu homes are burned, it's really kind of hard to know exactly where they are. But the one landmark that I remember is Moon Shadows, is a restaurant. And I would always drive by Moon Shadows. Anytime you left campus to go to the airport, you go down PCH and you drive through, downtown Malibu and a lot of these restaurants. And Gladstone's was one of them. Moon Shadows is one. And Moon Shadows burned. And so when that was mentioned, and then also the Getty Villa, there's a museum there. I knew about where all this was. And it's on the southern end of Malibu, closer to Pacific Palisades, of course. But it went up the beach a lot. And I think randomly it stopped close to Grant Cardone, the real estate developer. I think it burned some of his house, but it didn't burn it down, maybe. His might have been the first in line that didn't burn down.
Wow.
But
I saw him. He was all over social media last week, raging.
Yeah. He's raging. Someone else who may be raging is a Dallas real estate magnate, is what the Dallas Morning News calls him. His name is Mehrdad Moayedi. Moayedi. He is a developer. He actually redeveloped the Statler. That is the hotel downtown. So it's a huge project.
Yeah.
He owned a house in Malibu that was destroyed as well. He bought it in 2020, had renovated it, and just kind of, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are not super empathetic to multi-millionaires losing their stuff, but there's also just thousands of normal families that lost their stuff. But even if you're wealthy, like just the fact that you lose personal stuff and you have to start over, and a lot of them don't have insurance on these places and they're multi-million-dollar places, it's not nothing, and it's very difficult. And Dad being in the fire business for a long time, I've just kind of always had a respect for the firefighters that go out and deal with these things, and it's just kind of just a real bummer in general. It's very sad to see.
Yeah. Wow.
Tavis and I actually, we had an encounter with a fire the other day. I don't think, did we talk about this?
No. I think this was after the podcast, possibly.
We were driving through Carrollton, going to Primrose, and we saw smoke billowing a couple streets over, and we're like, turn here. And sure enough, like, we turned onto the street, there's one guy on the phone. There's no fire trucks.
Yeah.
There's a dude on the phone out in the street, and there is a legit, you can see flames, fire coming from this house, the back of this house.
Yeah.
And it was, we pulled up, the guy was like, yeah, I'm calling. So he had called 911. There's no fire trucks anywhere close. So I jump out. I'm like, I'm going to go start knocking on the neighbors' doors. Like, they need to know about this. So I run to a neighbor, no answer. This one's kind of a dilapidated house, no answer. Knocking. Sound like a madman, I'm sure. Went to the next house, all the no soliciting signs, all this don't bother us. They had a Ring doorbell, and still no answer,
Like, your neighbor's house is on fire, get out.
Yeah. And like, that's when the ambulance pulled up, and this guy jumps out, and he looked a little panicked. Like, I don't know that they knew exactly what they were pulling onto the street to see. And I think he realized it was bigger already than maybe they thought. And so he was like throwing his clothes on as fast as possible. Well, it was about that time that I looked back at the firehouse, and I realized a guy is walking out with a couple dogs.
Yeah.
And that's when I thought, maybe I should have knocked on that door too.
Well, I thought that the guy that was on the phone
I just kind of assumed somebody else.
Yeah, no.
And I assumed, like, whoever's in there, they're obviously aware their house is on fire. So I'm going to go ahead and move to the neighbors.
I know.
But when I saw him coming out with dogs, I was like, maybe I should have started there.
Yeah.
I felt bad. But he was coming out with dogs. And so then we went around to the other street that backed up to it. And we finally did talk to one neighbor who was not aware of it.
Gas lines too, so I was worried about.
Lines.
Yeah, the fire was in the back. It looked like maybe coming from the garage.
Yep. So anyway, fire truck
never
pulled
been that up and close and personal to
I
one
know.
that fresh, right? Like, as it was starting before the
you could hear the popping, and then the fire trucks pulled onto the street, and they were telling everyone to get out of the way. So we got out of there and just kind of cleared out the space, and
we did our public service.
We did our civic duty, which was really weird. Is the next day I drove by that street, and I couldn't even tell which house it was. I was like, I don't know if there wasn't a whole house burned down, so I'm assuming it was like almost like a separate garage or something.
After we left Primrose, I went back by, and Atmos was there, and they still had a little bit blocked off, like for the alley. But like, the big ladder truck was pulling away, so I guess they got it out pretty quick.
Yep, they handled their business. One more news story, which I thought was cool, out of the Dallas Morning News. One of Texas's most popular state parks to double in size with a land purchase of $43 million. One little weird side note from the story is that this comes from a pool of money that was voted on in 2023, overwhelmingly approved, of a $1 billion acquisition fund for new parkland, and this is only 43 million of that. I'm like, man, they've got some room to move there. But this is a park I've been to before, down in the hill country, Enchanted Rock. Have you ever been to Enchanted Rock?
I have not.
Down Fredericksburg way, whenever we go to Inks Lake with our friends that live down there, kind of between Inks Lake, Burnett, and Fredericksburg, there's state park Enchanted Rock, beautiful. It's a pink granite formation. Amazing hiking, really fun. It's just beautiful. So it's worth going. I always talk about we need to go take a trip down to San Antonio, but we could kind of meander Hill Country Way and go here and kind of get down to San Antonio. But this is a fun, half day to go check out Enchanted Rock. But they say that this purchase is actually going to they're getting 3,000 acres adjacent, and it's going to double the size, which is really cool because it seems like a big park already. So I thought that was a neat thing. And if you've never enjoyed Enchanted Rock, you should definitely go check that out. And then go to Fredericksburg and Llano and all of those hill country towns, get some good barbecue down that way. All right, let's go into our section where we've been breaking down houses, and we are going to break down a house, but we're going to do it a little differently today. So Tavis and I, on a regular basis, so this is how it goes, and I'm helping out. And I'm looking for houses for Tavis to buy because he's open to doing more flips. And so I'm kind of scouring the internet, the MLS, like, hey, would this be a possibility? And so there's a certain math formula that goes into every flip. And I'm going to go through that. And one thing I did want to talk about just real quickly is when we're going to get into the renovation. And we've been talking a lot about renos. Just as a little overview, let me get over here. I won't necessarily share this screen, but so one of the things from a mentality standpoint, from a reno standpoint, that I actually dawned on me today, and I think this came into play when we went to go look at that house the other day in Richardson. It was a bad flip, and it was could have been an awesome house. It backed up to a creek, but I think this is the mentality difference. Yours is. So the guys who bought that house and flipped it, I think their mentality was this: we got the house and we can spend $80,000. Let's see what we can get done. They kind of they have like, hey, we can spend 80 grand. Let's see how far we can get with that. Your mentality is the comps say that this house is going to sell for this certain amount. We need $80,000 to get the 80 to the ARV we want. Like you say the house needs this stuff. It's going to cost $80,000 in order to sell it properly. And I think these guys, so we walk in, we go into this flip. One of the big telltale signs for me was in the kitchen. They had used brushes to paint. Like in the pictures, it looked really cool. But they used brushes to paint the cabinets. They had moved the hinges. They had not filled in the holes from the hinges. They just painted over them, and they were still very visible.
There was no sanding.
No sanding. The classic sconce on the top of the ceiling that had we talked about this last week, where they did not demo completely. They scraped the ceilings in one room, but the light that was there was too big. When they took it down, put the new one in, you had this little ring of texture around that light, and they didn't fix that. And so on and so forth as you go throughout the house. Like the bathrooms were crap. Like the tile work was crap. There's no Schluter on the tile, which is like a big thing for me. Like they didn't replace the windows. They didn't do anything on trim outside. It was kind of rotten trim. It's like they did all the glamorous stuff that they thought would do really good in pictures and didn't do anything else. And even that stuff, they didn't do a good job. So
yeah,
it kind of sucked. It was
kind of pictures. And this is where, it goes back to, like, pictures are a tool to get people in the door. Yeah. But if your pictures are better than what the house is, then it's disappointing, right? And this is why it goes back to, I don't think there's ever going to be a time where somebody just buys a home off the internet sight unseen, as advanced as the internet can get, because there's just something different about walking it physically. Yeah. And you walk through it and you're like, oh no, this is not good.
So this brought up this question of, okay, I think there's probably some things, and we've talked we go back to Flipping University. If you haven't listened to those, are really good episodes early on. And when we were doing the podcast, we did huge deep dives into every aspect of flipping a house. So I'm sure we touched on some of these things, but so when you're comping a house and you say, hey, let's get to the renovation budget, normally we're starting around $30 a foot. That's a very lipstick job, all the way up to, let's say, 60 or 70 a foot, which is like outside the wall, kind of an up, it can get up there. So somewhere in between there is where a lot of things land, $45, $50, $60. So there are some baseline things that I've noticed, like you won't flip anything if you can't do these baseline things. So correct me if I'm wrong. So the always things, like every house you do, I don't think you would ever flip a house and not paint everything inside, right?
Yeah, paint's almost a given because it's one of the most common things you can do to freshen the house up, right? And it
Yep.
changes the smell of the home. And having good painters obviously is the last thing
It has to
people
be good.
see.
Yeah.
So having a good paint job with the right color schematics make a huge difference.
Doing a good job on the cabinet. So this is just the execution has to be there. But
Mm-hmm.
whenever you're saying, hey, here's our rehab budget, like you're always going to do paint. I think you're always going to do flooring, especially carpet. You might keep some wood flooring, but you're probably going
Mm-hmm.
to sand it. Like I was trying to think through, like, is there ever maybe some decent tile? Is there ever time when
Yeah.
you don't factor in doing flooring?
Yeah. I mean, like you've been in my house on Odessa, the midterm rental, and
Mm-hmm.
that house actually the wood floor was a glue down wood floor with tile in the kitchen, and I was able to sabotage that and keep it.
Salvage,
Um,
not sabotage.
Salvage, yeah, not sabotage. Jeez,
Yeah.
choice
I
awards.
sabotage things. You're like, hey, go demo.
Salvage. Yeah, no, that and then that Arbor Glen house I bought this past year. That's a rental. The flooring in it was an LVP. It wasn't
Okay.
bad.
So that's kind
Um,
of that's a
and I was
sometimes
able to
deal.
keep it. So if I can keep something and make it work, I will.
Okay.
Countertops,
Well, that's
you
it. So
know,
in my sometimes
things like that.
category, I got countertops and sometimes. So in my always category, I had paint, flooring, light trim. You normally change out lights, at
Hmm.
least the trim, right? Um,
It's easy enough to do. I mean, it's
yeah,
easy. It's not going to break the bank, and it makes a big difference.
plumbing trim for the most part.
Yeah, if the plumbing trim's okay and it's working, it's functional, it's not super old,
Yeah.
then I'll work with what's there. Like there was a house on, if you remember Sunscape. Sunscape is a good example of keeping several things.
Hmm.
So if you remember that when you first walked it, I kept the flooring, I kept the countertops. I had to find a backsplash that was complimentary, but we did repaint everything inside.
Yeah, you painted, you
Um,
kept the countertops, and
but
you
we
worked
kept the
around that.
flooring. I kept the tile on the master. I kept the tile on the secondary bathroom, even though these would not be things I would pick, but I was able to work with it. And then the
Okay.
countertops in the kitchen, I might have just mentioned that, but
Yeah, you kept
um,
those. I remember that.
yeah,
So door handles, do you always change out door handles?
for the most part, I think in that house, I can't remember if we did or didn't. If they've been updated and I can work with it, then I will. But the majority of the time, yes, I'll change them out. I mean, look, here's the budget. I mean, typically you can buy, new door handle sets for the entire house with levers for $300,
Yeah, it's
and
very
then
cheap
you're
and
gonna
it
pay
looks
a
great.
couple $100s for somebody to install them. So,
Mhm.
for $500, I mean, it makes a
All
big
new
difference.
look. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You're always doing something with landscaping. You're either cleaning it up, putting new things in. It's rare that you would never touch the landscaping,
Yep.
I would think.
Yep.
And one random one is that, like, very often you will stain the fence. Like
Yes. Yeah.
you kind of give the fence like this new fresh look. So that was in my always. The sometimes I had countertops, bathroom tile, new tub, shower pans, scraping ceilings, accent walls, or architectural improvements. Those are
Hmm.
kind of like a sometimes thing, if the budget allows. And only if the needed is windows, roofing, major plumbing, major electrical, moving walls. Like that's
Yep.
if the budget allows and it's like, hey, we have to replace the roof, we have to replace cast iron, we have to replace the electrical panel. Those are like huge parts of your budget, but it's not like you're going in like
Yeah.
every time. I always redo the plumbing. I always
Well,
redo
the challenge and the opportunity, right, in the businesses, usually it's going to start with the majors first. So you get a home that's prior to 1985, you're like, all right, 2 out of 3 homes, the plumbing has to be replaced. So that we need to allow for that budget, right? Does it need foundation? Has it had foundation before? What's the roof condition? Right now, there's a microscope on anything less than 5 years with most insurance companies. In fact, I had a roof that's 5 years old on a rental property that got flagged from a drone of the new insurance company
Oh my God.
saying it needed a new roof from hail damage. And I had a roofer go out there. He's like, yeah, there's a little bit, and there's a storm, so maybe you get a new roof. So
Hmm.
we filed it with the past insurance company, the insurance company I had it, under coverage before when the storm happened last year. And they come out and they object it, and they, you know, write it up and say, no, it's not significant enough, and blah, 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 blah.
Thanks, new
So,
insurance company,
yeah.
but
And so the new insurance company, basically wrote me a cancel letter, then, in fact, refunded my money. So I had to, now take this letter and go tell the new insurance company, hey, we're good. And so it's been a pain in the butt.
Hmm.
But anyways, that's just something you have to be aware of.
yeah, you got to start
Um,
with the big ones because they're non-negotiables, but it's not something that you're going to voluntarily. Okay, I do this all the time. I'm going to spend this money. This is kind of this is how I do it. So you
yeah,
start with the big things you have to take care of, and then you go to, all right, then you almost go to the always section of okay, we're going to
yeah,
do paint, we're going to do this and that. And then if you have if the ARV will allow it and you can buy it right, okay, what if we made this an arch? What if we took out this wall? What if we, kind of upgraded we did LED mirrors in the bathrooms instead of just standard mirrors? That's kind of where your design, that gray area of how nice can we make it? What
mm-hmm,
level of countertop are we doing? How fancy are we getting with certain things? That's that gray area right there. So,
yeah,
so I found this house. I don't think you've seen this. This one is 410 Malden Drive in Richardson. This came up as a comp. I was trying to comp some stuff for Gavin and them, looking at some houses, and this
yeah,
one came up, right? So this is a house that's been on the market down here. Is what we see down here, 80 days.
yeah.
And they've lowered the price recently from $325 to $299. Seems
So they
decent.
got under 300. Yeah.
Under 300, right? So square footage is 1558. It's a 3.2. I think it's one full, one half. So there's some room for maybe you can make the half a full, something that you could look at. But so just looking at this house, kind of reminds me of Polk a little bit, but
Yeah.
kind of a standard but decent lot, decent neighborhood. But inside, of course, you've got the old school, 12 by 12 tile, paint's awful trim. You've got a weird situation with the electrical.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is an old patio or something. This is the
Yeah.
patio, which is a weird first picture to show. But they ran external conduit to the fan. They've taken out a weird wall, but they didn't match up the flooring with the tile. So
Well,
there's
that's
just
a
a lot of
mirror.
problems, right? It's
I think it's a mirror, right? Or no?
I don't know that is a mirror. It does look like a mirror, but I don't think it is. I think that's the breakfast area right there.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So
Yeah.
you can see these sliding doors, very typical old single pane, just
Yep.
single pane sliding doors. You've got these old electrical trim, kitchen very, very closed in.
Yeah.
Not a lot of storage, cheap cabinets. We always talk about fur down. So this is picture 5. If you're just looking at number 410 Malden Drive, picture 5 is in the kitchen. All this little sheetrock that surrounds the center light, this is called a fur down, a little drop down. A lot of times we'll take that out, raise up the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, this whole house
And
just
one thing that I was reminded of, and something that you've probably seen this before, but now are aware. When you take fur downs out, as simple as it may be, to raise
as fun
it
as
up,
it may be to hit with your sledgehammer.
yeah, to raise it back up to the 8-foot ceiling, it's pretty simple. I mean, there's sometimes reasons why they did it, and other times, it didn't make a lot of sense. But it was a very popular thing. It was done back in the 60s and the 70s, even going into the 80s. But when you remove them, a lot of the electricians, when they wired the house up originally, cheated. And instead of going to the actual stud wall and going down from the top plate, they cut corners and went through the fur down.
Mm-hmm.
So we ran into that at Primrose
Yep. And
with
there's just wires
a
hanging
lot of
everywhere.
things that were ran through the fur down versus ran properly. And
Yep. So the electrician has to fix those, tidy
Yep.
those things up. And so yeah, so this is like a classic house that we would walk through, like, yeah, this whole thing needs to be touched, right?
Yep.
Little walls here and there. But, texture on the walls not too bad. You could save a lot of the side bedrooms, change out the electrical trim like in picture 7, repaint this room, change the fan out, change the carpet out, call it a day. Maybe new baseboards. May or may not replace windows, kind of depending on if there's fogging and if there's the price will allow it, right? So
is master up or down?
that's a great question. I'll have to look at that. You can't really tell from the pictures.
Yeah.
They do have a window unit in some of these. It's hard to tell. You have, some popcorn ceiling, some not. You've got this weird laminate on the stairs, and then you got another either wood or weird laminate in the living room. You've got mismatched tile. Now the backyard, pretty legit. Got a cool pergola, nice little stamped patio. Like it could be something nice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I looked at this house, like, yeah, it's a pretty cool house. So let's just use this as an example. Let's find out if the bedroom is living room 1 primary bedroom on 2. So upstairs master is not
Okay.
ideal. So we would take a house like this, and then we say, okay, what is the most that this house would sell for? If it was fixed up, what could we expect this house to sell for, right?
Yeah.
So I went over here, pulled
Also
some
known
comps.
as ARV.
Also known as ARV. So I've already pulled these are our comps, right? So I went half a mile from the house. These 1422, we're sitting at 1558. So this is up to 1,700 square feet, down to 1,400 square feet, kind of hovering around the square footage. Most of these are 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, so you have to kind of, like, these here are condos. We would take those out, but overall looking at kind of where we could get. And I did this quickly. So I came to the conclusion of there was one through here that was actually renovated. It's on Malden, and so this one is a decent one. Are you seeing this?
Yep.
So this is on the same street. It's a 1-story, so primary's down. A little different because it's 1-story, but it's flipped, right? So they've spent the money, they flipped it.
Yeah.
And a little bit smaller. So they sold it for $268 a square foot. So I had actually factored in at $265. We may need to cheat that lower just because of the upstairs primary.
Well, and it's a smaller square footage, right?
Yeah.
So,
but just for
that
math,
dollar per foot again, just got to kind of double check it. It listed at $274 a foot. What did it end up selling for?
And it went down. Yep.
Yeah.
Went to 400. So yeah, so this is kind of like a quick and dirty. So the numbers I'm about to show you are based on doing 265, but that might be a little bit high, right? So we can
well, and the other big thing is that's a single story, it's a smaller home, but it's a single story, so it's more desirable than having a 2-story.
But these are the things we would kind of talk through.
Yep.
So let's look at this, right? 410 Malden. And so the first thing I came to the conclusion of is ARV was 413, based on 265. So a little over 400. That one sold for 400. We're a little bit bigger, but we can kind of back into changing these numbers.
Potentially push it to 4.25. Maybe.
Yeah.
So I like increments of 25.
Yeah. So, but by the number 413-ish, right? So the next thing is we always multiply that ARV by 0.95. So 5% cost of sale, because we are realtors and we can represent ourselves. And then we have to pay the other broker and some closing costs. And so we subtract out closing costs.
0.92 is the correct number.
If you're not an agent, 0.92. But for us, it's the cost of sale is 5%. So that gives us the number of 392. So now we're working with 392,000. Then we subtract out the rehab. And so I think I just guesstimated 45 a foot, and because we don't really know if any major systems are wrong or anything like that, but just, let's guesstimate 45 a foot. which puts us at 70,000.
Yep.
And so, and then the next thing you consider is, and of course, this might fluctuate a lot. Like if you're really lipsticky, you might be 35. If you've got to replace the roof and it's cast iron and all these things, it's going to push you up.
Based on the pictures I see, that's 45, I think, is a starting point.
Yeah. So then you go for your desired profit, and everyone's different.
Yep.
Some people go off a percentage of the sale. Some people go off a flat rate, but you put in your desired profit. And so just for sake of argument, $50,000.
Mm-hmm.
And so then this gives you what we call the max allowable offer. MAO, I put MOA, max allowable offer. So when you do the math and you look at all that with all of these considerations, we're at $272,000 in an offer. And so that gives us a starting point. Well, the nice thing about this specific house is it actually just dropped to $299.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not a slam dunk, but it's just, they're actually kind of close, right?
Yeah.
So they dropped to $299 voluntarily. By our numbers, it's showing that 272.
Yeah.
Now maybe our ARV is a little bit off, but maybe our rehab's a little bit off, but we're not too far off, right?
Here's something else, even, just, quick math, and we've talked about this before, but if you divide 272 into 413, it gives you a number, and that number is 65 cents or 65%.
Right. And that's what you'll normally say, like, I try to buy around 65 cents on the dollar. Yep. So either way you back into this, you're getting to a similar point.
Yeah.
And so,
and all these numbers we know just from doing them over and over and over again, right? And tracking, we know the rental cost because we track the last project. And, the more that we do it, the more that we kind of get aware of that. Our cost of sale is because we track every cost of sale. So the average is 4.5 to, 5.25, depending on, time of year. So we know that number. And then, desired profit, allows us to be flexible. If you stub your toe and that number becomes 30,000, you're still profitable, even though it's not desirable. And 50,000 sometimes can go to 60, 75, depending on, if it swings the other way.
Yeah.
So that's a good number. You can also do it by percentage. I mean, if it's a less project and I feel like I can get in and out in 60 days, then I might, reduce that profit margin. If it's a smaller price point, I got less money in it, same thing.
Yeah.
If it's something with I'm buying into it heavy, it's a $500,000 to get into it, plus another 150, 200,000 reno, then I'm going to want that profit margin to be bigger because it's tying up capital for a longer period of time.
Yep. So this is kind of like the exercise that we do on houses over and over. And I've gotten better at running comps, although I literally did this in a few minutes. So I didn't pick up on the 2-story versus 1-story. I was looking at the Malden being on the same road, and I wanted to find one that had been renovated to give us an idea of how much would a renovated house go for in this area. So
no, you did great.
We could kind of hone in on it.
On the location of that, did you double check location, make sure it's not back into a busy road? Or
I didn't. So yeah, that's the other thing. So the next thing I would do is get onto Google Maps, then get onto Google Earth, and just make sure it doesn't back up to a bunch of electric lines or big commercial or a major road. I haven't gone to that point yet. And, and then if those all sort of check out, it would be one that I would want to go walk today and just, hey, let me just get in there and look at the panel, call the agent, make sure that there's they actually replaced plumbing last year, or they replaced the roof 2 years ago.
Well, and here's another trick of the trade too. So depending on what they're offering or how they're structured on the deal, if you look at this from a perspective of they're listed for $299, well, $299, let's assume they're expecting to pay, 6% plus their cost of sale, so it's going to be 8% cost of sale to them, right? So if that's the case, then you're looking at 24,000 off. So you can assume that their net number that they're looking to obtain based off the current list price at $299 is going to be approximately $275, or $276, right?
Yeah.
So now, mind you, that number is going to shift a little bit. They already have a listing agreement. They have, um, you know, they have taxes that they've got to pay, even if I pay title. So that number gets massaged a little bit. So it's not quite there, but the net offer, if you can look at it, you can narrow that valley and get closer to it, then
Yeah, if you're
you
saving
have
them
a better
another
chance of getting a
3%.
deal. It's just a matter of letting the agent know. On the other hand, like, hey, we're going to do this deal, and we don't you don't have to worry about paying a buyer's agent commission and that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
I mean, that saves them around, they've probably allocated, $7,000 or so on this. And so, yeah, you're coming down. But yeah, looking at Google Earth, we'll look at this. This is an interior lot, which is great. It's not up to any commercial. It's actually not even really close to any major road.
Yep.
That's a really nice lot. That's a really, here's an elementary school right over here. We do have some commercial, so it's not way out in the middle of nowhere. Of course, we know this area anyway.
So
but
now the big challenge, the next task would try to go back within the last year and see what you can find in comparison to a 2-story with the master up in that pocket.
See if you can find that.
That's where you have to get a little dialed in when you have a one-off like this.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason it hasn't sold yet, because it seems like it's priced pretty good. But then you have to kind of read through the lines a little bit and say, okay, what's holding this thing back? Besides it being dated, what else are the challenges?
Yep. Well, cool. So I just wanted to go through that exercise, and maybe we'll mix that in from time to time, and then we'll mix in talking about rich people's houses from time to time, because that's fun too. But yeah, so I'll do a little bit of research, keep you updated. What would be really cool is if we found a house on the podcast and we picked it up. So what would be?
There you go.
Yeah, I will follow up with this and try to see where we can get with it. But anyway,
awesome.
All right, that is today's episode. Tavis is going to a funeral, and then next week he's going to be out. So we're going to try to do an episode next week before he's out again. If not, may get another co-host in here. Gene did a good job last time, so we'll figure that out. But until then, try to find us on social, Instagram, Facebook, Tavis Westbrook Designs. I'm Ashton Hines, Dallas Real Estate Guy. And until next time, have a great day.
Thanks, guys.